This 2-in-1 laptop from 2015, I believe, was purchased and it worked great with Windows 8.1. When my dad got it, I modified it a bit so that the services were less, and it ran pretty decent, pretty good for browsing, just going online, buying a few things here and there, eBay, Amazon. But over time, Windows 10 got slower, so an update was done to it. And the problem with this update is then it couldn't revert back to Windows 8.1. Now, this 2-in-1, okay, uses UEFI BIOS. So right off the bat, that's problematic. You need UEFI tools and a Windows PE environment to actually install Windows 8.1 over this system. That's quite complicated. I'm going to go through over the steps on the other computer of how we did this. Now, the steps are as follows. We need the Microsoft Windows 8.1 ISO for Microsoft, okay? And as you can see here, I'm going to the local C drive right here, so you can see what I have here. Okay, so what it was is the steps are going from A, B, C, and we should just stop there. Okay, so we grabbed the Microsoft Windows 8.1 32-bit ISO for Microsoft. You can get it off them. Okay, I'm going to zoom back just a tiny bit here so it's easier to see. A little bit easier right there. That's still pretty good. Okay, then we extract the contents of that ISO onto this laptop. Now, you don't need to use another computer to prep the files and bring them over. You can do it all on the system. But you got to go through these steps. The first thing we do is we grab the Windows 8.1 32-bit ISO. We extract the contents here, in here, okay? The next thing we do is we go grab a tool from online called Double Driver, and you can see I have it here, Double Driver, and we run it. I'm going to run it here, and we back up, and it says Scan Current System. So when it scans, you will see only a few things selected. Okay, don't back up only those things. Make sure that Select All in here at the top is applied. The reason why is because you want every single driver to carry over to Windows 8.1. Even if it doesn't work, you want those drivers available because there could be a device that Windows 10 has a driver for that Windows 8 had an older one for. I hope you understand what I'm saying here. You're trying to get the updated drivers into Windows 8.1, but they're not available online. They're only available within the Windows 10 installation, right? So you have to be very careful with this. Make sure you select all, and then you're going to back up now, and it says structured folder. So click structured folder, and then save it, like I did. Cancel that, to here, right here. So this is all the drivers for the system with everything selected. Now, the reason why you want to do this is because you won't have a chance to get this stuff after if Windows 8.1 installs and there's a problem. You can see it here. This is the ISO. That's my Windows 8 CD key that I saved from before. I can't show you the key because this was a purchased laptop that has the Windows 8.1 CD key. So I have to leave it there. So I need that key there because during the installation, you're going to need it. So the next step after this is back up your documents. Absolutely critical you back up your documents. I use the 16 gig flash drive to back up all the documents from the system. Just critical files. Now, when you do this to the system, you're not going to be able to use the installations here from the program files on Windows 8.1. We're going back to another state of the system. So you're not going to be able to do that. You can't bring in the applications from Windows 10 into Windows 8.1. We're going back. We're not going forward. So be careful with that. Now, once you have this all set up and prepped, your backup files are ready to go. They're saved onto another system. They're safe. And now it's time to do the next step. Now, some of the instructions that I talked to you about are already here. So you already seen them. You already know how they work. Okay, I'm going to get the mouse here. All right, so this is all the instructions here. Now, Rufus, the little installation tool called Rufus, we're going to need that to install this tool. And this is a Windows pre-environment. And we're going to zoom in here a bit more so you can see this, the files. Okay, so we have the WinPSE x86 ISO. You need this tool in order to get the Windows 8.1 to be able to be installed on the Acer Switch 10. The reason why is because you need a UEFI system to install Windows 8. And most of the jump drives that are out there, when you run a regular boot disk on them, they won't run because you need certain files on that system in order for this to work. And I'm going to explain to you why. We have Power ISO open here. Pardon me. Okay, and we have that ISO here open. Now, this ISO, this WinPSC, is a bootable environment that has applications so you can restore images to your computer, you can back up things from it on a dead system that you can't boot. That's what it's for, okay? So we're going to go back a bit more here. We need to bring it out a bit. Okay, so what we have here, right over there, that's better. Inside this ISO structure, this is the Windows 8.1 that you just seen. We need the EFI folder, EFI here, both of these. So just bring the whole folder over. So I'm going to just bring it here. Just carry it over there. Okay. Now, inside this folder are very important critical files that you need. So I'm going to close that folder for now. We're going to compare both of these and why you need that folder to put back onto this ISO after you install it with Rufus. If you boot this ISO the way it is, it won't boot on the Acer Switch 10. So under the UEFI, we're going to boot. And you can see that there's already differences in here. There's a memtest function here, etbs boot, bootsect exe. There's differences already here. This is the reason why we need that folder. So under UEFI, under Microsoft, go back here. Under boot, we're going to Microsoft boot here in this section here. And again, major differences here. The problem with the Acer Switch 10, it's very locked down, as you'll see here. When we go to BIOS on it, you're going to see. So we need this EFI folder. After you install it, what you do is you open it up, and you'll see your USB jump drive here. Just dump it right in there and overwrite the EFI files there. That's all you have to do. Okay, once it's done, once you have that, and pay attention here. The reason why we need the X32 is very interesting because the processor on the Acer Switch 10 is 64-bit, but because it only has 2 gigs of RAM, we cannot use a 64-bit OS. So very confusing here on how to go about this. You would think it would be this one. It's a 64-bit processor. No. Windows 32-bit 10, Windows 10 32-bit was installed there over Windows 8.1 32-bit. No 64 bits possible. So once you have the EFI folder transferred over, okay, now we get down to business. So here is the final instruction set. So the boot IA32 is critical to get from Microsoft on the ISO, critical, so that you copy over the EFI folder from that ISO into the Rufus installation of WinPSC. I hope you're following so far. We're replacing after, we don't replace it inside the ISO. We just install it as it is. We got Rufus here. Let's go over. The hard drive is a bit asleep here, but just give me a second. Okay, let's go to USB tools, and we have Rufus here, and we're going to go to 3.9. We're going to run it, and we're going to select the ISO, and we're going to go to local disk I here, and boot instructions here, tools, and let's see what we have here. Oh, that's right. Never mind. And we have this one here. We can't choose 64-bit, remember that. So under here, we need a jump drive. So what we have here, I have a little jump drive here. We're going to go ahead and use it. So I'm going to install it right now so you can see it. By the way, these are the Dell 8 gig drives, the orb drives that they can be hacked, so you can use them as a writable drive. Haha. Okay, so we have the 8 gig drive here, and notice here that we have to choose FAT32. Very important. Now, you can choose to use NTFS and try it on there, but UEFI has a problem with NTFS, so you gotta be very careful. The way that GTP, this ISO does, it does give you the partition for NTFS, but it creates a FAT32 partition for the UEFI section. Okay, so if you want, leave it as default. Okay, just don't change anything. Or if you want to change it to FAT32 to also give you where the program files are going to be stored that are inside that ISO will be FAT32 based. They'll be inside of FAT32 space. I would leave it default here, okay, because it will create the UEFI partition. So you're still fine if you don't switch it. In case if you have a problem, come back and redo it again as FAT32, okay? It does do the second partition, okay, the UEFI partition. It will be there. So once you install this, remember, copy the UEFI folder, just like that. And it's going to tell you, would you like to overwrite it? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah. Okay, go ahead. So once you do that, and it copies over, we'll go back and make sure that it's in there. And that's the critical file that you need there. That under EFI there. At boot IA32. Okay. Now under restart, we're going to start pressing F2. Okay. Now I'm going to put in my password. And it's important that you're going to understand something very soon here. So in order for this to boot properly and get this all working, the first thing you need to do under security is to set a supervisor password. You must do this or you won't be able to boot the flash drive. So supervisor password, set it. I already set it to my name. You don't need to set a user password. Just the supervisor one has to be set. Make sure it's important that you understand that. So set up the supervisor password first. Then what you're going to be doing is on the main section, you're going to enable F12 boot. Now F12 is the boot menu so that you can get access to the flash drive. So you can choose it. So make sure that it's enabled. Then under boot, okay, you set it to disabled. Now, a lot of people have asked, what about all these settings? The secure boot settings. You don't need to erase all secure boot setting. Select the UEFI. You do not need to do this stuff because you have a control over it. Okay, so under boot, just put it to disabled. A lot of people get confused with the menu here, and they go in and start erasing the secure boot. They select the UEFI. Stop doing that stuff. You're going to run around in circles all day. Just go right to boot, disabled. Set it to disabled, and then bring in your USB HDD. Very critical point now. It's usually down here at the bottom, and use these arrows to bring it to the top. So what you want is to have USB HDD. I usually have CD-ROM up here, but I just left it as network boot. And then put the Windows Boot Manager last during this critical step of installation. I just leave it because there's no need to worry about it. Okay, so once you're set this, USB HDD is there, secure boot's disabled, must be disabled or this won't work. Here's what we're going to do. So I'm going to get out my USB jump drive for 1 second. Okay, so now we're going to boot the system, and what we need is the jump drive that we made previously and this OTG cable. These are the only things you need. And I'm going to pan the camera that way a bit there. And this tool goes on the side here. Okay, on the micro USB port. You're going to take this tool on one side, make sure it goes in, make sure it's in properly. So yeah, I wrote down when P boot OS, when PSE. That's the one I'm using, the same one I just showed you. So we keep it there. And now that we set up BIOS, it should boot properly. We're going to do that by, when the computer resets here, we're going to press F12 because we enabled, remember, the F12 menu to get to that boot section. All right, let's exit here, save changes. Yes. And as soon as you see the boot recycle, you're going to put F12 and just keep pressing it. And now you have the USB HDD SanDisk. From that point on, there is no more instructions needed because you're going to be in the Windows environment. Okay, and I'm going to run it just to show you how it looks like. Okay, so in case if you're decided, well, what does this thing actually look like inside? How do I know if it works? Well, let's boot it. So we'll wait until it boots. As slow as it is, I have to show this step. We can't miss this. So once it boots into the operating system of the Windows PE environment, then we're able to see what it looks like. Now, the reason why I mentioned this one is because it's very important for you to understand that it's actually a very good tool to have, not just for the system, but for any system you have. So as you can see here, it's a system configuration, please wait. So this is a Windows PE environment, but it has a lot of applications already built in for backing up, for restoring. It runs a full Explorer. You can even go online if you have the driver. This is basically a Windows environment, almost full running. So there's no audio drivers here because, again, I don't want to install it. I just want to keep this image clean so I can boot into multiple systems. So you can see here, pardon me, there's a lot of tools already built in here. So use them however you want, but that's not what we're concerned with. Okay, what we're concerned with is this one. We go to this PC, okay, and now guess what we have here? Guess what we have here? Exactly what we need. We got to go to Acer C, and then go over to the, remember that system that we did, the Windows 8.1 folder, and I'm going to zoom in, show you what it looks like. I'm going to try to zoom in as slow as I can here so you don't get vertigo here. Okay, and there's the folder that I showed you before. And all we do is we click Setup, and we're done. From this point on, it's self-explanatory. There's really nothing else to say. You just go through the normal installation of Windows 8. And Windows 10 is goodbye and good riddance. Okay, so we're going to shut the system down. This is how you do it. This is similar to Hiren's boot CD, by the way. I prefer this one because it's the first one I grabbed that worked properly on the system. I downloaded a couple other ones and they didn't work. Why? Because they didn't have that UEFI folder properly on there. So I'm going to show you this system one more time before we power it down. Very important for you to see this. So as you can see here, that partition that I was talking about, the bootx partition. Let me see what we have here. So NTFS still worked. And this one here, FAT32. So it did create the FAT32 partition, and it created a bootx of NTFS. This is why I showed you before, where if it doesn't work, switch it to FAT32. If it does work, like in this case, leave it. Just leave it alone. I left it alone, and it worked. In case if it doesn't work, that's when you switch that partition in Rufus, that option, to FAT32. In case if it doesn't work. Some UEFI BIOSes might say, no, I want a FAT32 partition, and I can't boot without it. So we're going to go into Windows PSC here, and we have the UEFI here. Remember the UEFI files that we replaced? They're here. That's why it booted properly, because the first time I tried this, it didn't boot. Okay? So, yeah, that's why I did that. That's why I told you to do that. Switch that UEFI folder, overwrite the files. Once you do that, you'll be able to boot. All right, so we're going to shut down. And actually, we should restart. Well, I don't want to shut it down. Anyways, take out the drive and let the main OS boot. And you'll see that every time the main OS boots, you'll see the circle here at the bottom. That's your sign telling you that it's booting. You know, it's okay, yeah, we're booting up to the system. But at any rate, this just shows you how easy it is to put Windows 8 back after Windows 10 is installed, either by accident or because you installed it and that you say, okay, I don't want it anymore. This is getting ridiculous. So what I'm going to do now, after the installation, I'm going to put a different shell on it so that we don't have this Windows 8.10 shell. Okay, so it'll be regular, like the Windows 7 one, kind of normal to it. Okay, so that's it for the installation. We have Windows 8. Now it's time to activate Windows 8, and that's up to you how you activate it. Just to let you know, I'm not going to show you that part. Just because of legality reasons, I can't show you that part. And we now have Windows 8 running, and I'm going to show you something very interesting about Windows 8 versus Windows 10. We're going to go to Performance. Now, this system just booted up, and what we're going to do is we're going to sit here for about a minute and just see what is the processor doing. What is the RAM doing? How many processes are running? That kind of thing. That's what I look at. So I look here and I look, okay, there was a spike there and it's pretty flatline right now. And right, it's running at 1.2 gigahertz and it went down to 0.52 because it throttles the CPU because there's no fans on this. So it has to throttle the CPU. So 5.2, 5.4, and 5.3. And you'll see it come down to almost 400 sometimes, 400 megahertz. And it goes up to 1.2. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking at these little CPU spikes to see if processes are affecting CPU performance. For example, we shouldn't see anything here, okay? I'm going to use a little kind of, here you go, that will work. I'll show you with a cool stick, I guess. So in here, on the CPU section, we're trying to see how far the spikes are. Because if the spikes are going up and down constantly, you know that there's processes here. Okay, we're going to go here to the RAM. We're going to go to memory here to see which one is taking up the most of the RAM. We know it's Windows Explorer. Okay, here's this one here, anti-malware service. Okay, the graphics subsection. So everything looks pretty decent there. The anti-malware is there by default. Whatever. It's not running too much. But you got to understand that this system only has 2 gigabit of RAM. It doesn't have a lot of RAM. So at any rate, the system runs much smoother, much better, less megahertz, okay, much cooler now than with Windows 10.